And welcome back to the SG3 podcast. I'm your host, Shravan. The podcast is named for an Indian who threw a football in middle school and his gym teacher was mesmerized. The guy that's on the show today, folks, when I told you I'm going to go get people to talk to, I think I landed my first big one in a while. He's a Deadspin writer. Yes, a fan-sided writer is talking to someone from Deadspin. This is one of the guys I'm really excited to interview. Writes a lot of good stuff, very knowledgeable. Mr. Criss Partee. Criss, welcome to the show.
Robin, what's going on, my man? I appreciate you having me on. Glad you sought me out and we're able to link up, man. Happy to be here.
Sounds good. Please make sure to follow Criss on Twitter. I'll put his Twitter handle in the video description below. You can find me as Shravan G News on Twitter, and of course, subscribe to my channel and check out Criss's stuff on Deadspin. Some good stuff.
Sounds like a plan. Sounds like a plan. So what's going on, brother?
Doing good. Great to have you on. First things first, though, what's life like for you now? Obviously, in this age of having access to a keyboard, having access to a computer where we can write and share our personal opinions about what's going on in the world of sports and not have to rely so much on television. What are you up to in terms of your writing?
For me, it's a lot. It really depends, on a day-to-day. For me, it's a lot of NFL and NBA coverage. And of course, at Deadspin, we tend to cover a little bit off the court as well, cover some social issues and different things like that. So it really, every day is kind of something different. And we're free over, where I'm at now at Deadspin to kind of write, I guess what we are interested in. So, we have people that kind of specialize in football, specialize in basketball. Some people specialize maybe in soccer. So, especially when the World Cup comes around, when soccer's big, we have certain people we go to for that. So it really kind of depends on, we even have people that cover pro wrestling to a certain extent. So we have different things that we're able to do. But I mean, overall, it's fun. It's never going to be fun anywhere all the time. But for the most part, I just love what I do, that I'm able to work in sports. And so I'm grateful. I'll put it like that. I'm grateful to, be able to do what I love for a living.
Absolutely. This is one of the dream jobs for everybody. They look forward to getting their platform. And in fact, I think that's one of the few benefits of social media. It has you have to be responsible enough. You have to be mature enough to build your own brand. And heck, I'll be honest. There have been times where I've not been professional. I've been kind of a troll. I've called out a few personalities, and I'm not gonna lie. I've done it before, but that's just who I am. And one of the things I do like about Deadspin, they're not afraid. So, in terms of you particularly, how did you get into sports writing? Because a lot of people say, "Oh, it's an easy for you to just write and write." I say no. Yes, it's easy to write your opinion, but to be an actual sports writer and do this takes a lot. So your background growing up, how did you get into this?
I mean, so I think we all have a different path that we take. For me personally, I started just in sports media in general. I started on the radio side. So I worked in radio. I'm from California originally. I'm in Chicago now. I started in radio doing production, running the board, as a producer, answering calls, eventually worked my way up a little bit, did some on-air stuff. I've done some on-air stuff as well. I also was, end up going back to school. So I didn't go to university right out of high school. So I ended up going, a few years later, going after I'd kind of already been in radio for a little bit, going back and really getting into journalism. Then I had already done a little bit of writing for, some local papers and things like that. But I went back and ended up going back to write and do journalism at Ohio University. So I did that, and I was still kind of doing some radio a little bit and got back into writing. And I guess, for the last, 6 years or so, pretty much mostly been writing, still done, do some radio here and there, do some radio shots here and there. Have a couple of podcasts that I've done over time. I have an NBA podcast that I do weekly as well right now. So, it's just, you have to really put yourself out there and find as much work as you can. Like if you're young getting into this, even right after college, you might not always find your first full-time gig as far as writing right away, if that's what you want to do, but just get experience, write wherever you can, do whatever you can. I mean, get on podcasts, do whatever you can. If you want to do the talking side of it, that is, get on shows, do whatever you can, but just write. If you have to freelance, do that as well. Some people actually prefer freelancing because they're not tied down to one company. You know what I mean? So that works for some people. And if you are a freelancer, freelance for as many different publications as possible, because different publications are going to have different styles. So you definitely want to, as many styles as you have under your belt are pretty good, which is, one of the reasons I feel like I was able to get into Deadspin, going on 3 years ago, because I had different experience under my belt. Also had a background in radio. So I've done sports on that side as well. So I kind of, almost like a utility player, you know what I mean? A utility player in baseball,
Right,
I could do different things in different aspects, and I knew different aspects of the industry.
I get you. During my first 4 years at Virginia Commonwealth, I worked as a part of WVCW student radio.
Yep, there you go.
Show there, produced a couple of their basketball games, hosted a few other shows with some various classmates. So I agree on the radio thing. I do freelancing stuff outside, even in addition to sports. I do like local news coverage in my hometown of Fairfax County in Virginia. So I'm with you on that part. But Deadspin, how did that come into play? When did you start, and what got you into Deadspin to begin with?
So summer of 2021. So I guess about a little bit over 2.5 years now, summer of 2021. And I had already applied with Deadspin a couple different times within, I guess, the previous year of actually getting hired. So, it was a process. And, eventually, and it was just having good timing. I had the person that was there, our boss at the time, Eric Barrow, who's no longer with the company. He was there, and he actually ended up coming back to me after interviewing me a couple months previous, and I didn't get the gig. And he came back to me a couple months later. Criss, are you still interested? It was just kind of like right place, right time, and I'm still here. Like I said, a little bit over 2.5 years later.
I've read a lot of people at that website, Karin Phillips, Julie DeCaro, Sean Beckwith, yourself. Do you actually keep in contact with your fellow writers?
I mean, yeah, we're not all, now you just so happen people that are kind of working out of the same office, but we have offices. Obviously, we have a Chicago office, we have a New York office, and we have a LA office. So our team is kind of spread out across the country, so to speak. So we're not all in the same office all the time, but we tend to talk, via Slack or whatever it is, email, and we're all in, obviously we have meetings as well too. So we're all pretty much in contact, at least a couple times a week. So yeah, I mean, I frequently talk to, a lot of those people as well. So, for the most part, we're all, as far as the staff goes, we have a small staff, but we're all pretty much in contact with each other for the most part.
I got you. I'm in a little bit of a similar situation. Our fan-sided crew, we're all spread across the country, but we do have a Slack channel in which we excuse me, we just communicate in there. Topics are sent out of some of the major stories, and we pick and choose what we're comfortable with. The main guys will obviously get bigger headlines. Myself, maybe I'll probably take like a miniature headline or like a slideshow, but for me, mostly it's just basically whatever's available. And if I feel like something's out there, I've been fortunate after working with them since 2020. I now have the ability to pitch topic, and more often than not, they're going to say, yes, go for it. Whereas someone else would potentially, in the past, they probably would have said, focus on this. It's a good topic. Maybe if it's open, we'll get you later. But now it's like, hey, you've got experience, go for it.
Yeah. And see, so I actually wrote for Fansided for a while, freelancing. Really? Yeah. Before I came to Deadspin. So I know a little bit about Fansided as well. I was there, it's been a few years ago now, but yeah, I freelanced there along with multiple other websites as well, where I was freelancing for a while as well before I got on with Deadspin full time. So I know the grind, brother. I know the grind.
It is what it is. we live in a world today where controversial hot takes, clickbait, um, sources, more of them truer than not, but that seems to be the mindset. It seems to be constantly regurgitating on social media, and the lack of professionalism per se from those particular folks. Not talking
Mhm.
about networks or anything. That's not fair to say that, but we have
Well,
seen certain individuals. We have seen certain individuals show a lack of professionalism, heavy bias, and unfair criticism. When you see all those things, as someone who's working in this field, what goes through your mind?
um, I mean, it's unfortunate to see at times, especially when people are blatantly unprofessional and they don't call things, I guess, the same way on both sides. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But I always try to keep in mind, people are people, and sometimes not just individuals, but sometimes brands and companies, they have agendas. So sometimes people have to go a certain way. I mean, you mentioned networks. We see some of the big networks on television sometimes, and sometimes they go a certain way with certain things, and that's So I just do my best to try to personally. I try to call things down the middle. For me, and this is just in life in general. It's kind of a case by case thing with me. I just try to be truthful and honest. Sometimes I'm critical in my writing of a team, a player, whatever. One thing I try not to do, I try not to make it personal. As far as athletes go, I try not to go there and make it personal, because I don't like when people do that, especially in the media. They make it like I have a personal vendetta, you know what I mean, against somebody. So I try not to do
Right,
that.
right.
But I mean, it's just one of those things to where we're in an age of, I like to say, it's more about being a fan now, even with those who are of us that are in the media. Everybody has like, if you look on, I mean, even hell, just look at ESPN. We'll use ESPN for example. Everybody likes to beat up on ESPN. I'm not trying to go at ESPN, but they're the biggest example that everybody
Fair
knows as
enough.
far as
Fair enough.
sports.
Fair enough.
It's like every show you look at, everyone has a favorite team. It hasn't always been like that. You know what I
That's
mean?
true.
Reporters, analysts, they used to be biased or unbiased, I should say. Now
Right, right,
everyone's
right.
biased. Everyone wants to pick his favorite team. And you get a lot of hyperbole where someone will say something. It's like, oh, well, this person, they had one great game. Now they're going to be the next great quarterback in the
Yep.
history of the game. Whoever it is, I can't think of any one example right now, but you know what I'm saying. Oh,
Oh,
that person is
absolutely.
this, that
Absolutely.
person is this, that person's that. They're the greatest thing since sliced bread. And it's like, dude, they had one good game. They had
Oh yeah.
one game, and we're
Oh yeah.
already anointing them as the next big whatever it is. So I'm just not a fan of that. Now I'll give somebody their props when they do well, but I just don't want to jump to the conclusion already. Just so, and a lot of times I think it's, people want to be first.
Oh
That's
yeah.
what it's
Oh
about.
yeah.
I mean, we've seen some of these breaking news people for all these leagues who want to be first to a story, but then they got it wrong, so they got to retract it, right? We've seen that happen recently. It happens all the time now. But
Absolutely. Many times.
it's because of the internet now, and it's the age of, I guess, immediate gratification, but you have to be first. And that's what a lot of these companies are paying for, breaking news. They just want to be first. There's an old saying, never let the truth get in the way of a good story. And that's what we see a lot of times.
Yes, sir. And when you bring a lack of professionalism, I like to give one example. Recently on ESPN's First Take, our friend Stephen A. Smith, great guy, completely cuckoo at times, but a great dude. He said, I won LA finals in June, and he went down on his knees and begged.
Oh, he's been
Like,
doing that for years.
literally doing it. And the first thing that went through my mind was, if that had been me, if that had been any of my guys that I worked with from VCU, from Boston, from my high school, Westfield High, the Watchdog newspaper, where I was one of the main sports writers, if any of us had done that thing, we get our butts canned by the bosses. This man's begging on national television for Los Angeles and Miami because of locality,
Yeah.
not because of basketball. My
That's kind of
professors
a
at Boston would have killed me if I had done that. Mr. Professor McKee and Professor Mulvihill, God bless them both, still running strong at the school. But boy, they would have kicked my butt if I had done that on television and they saw that.
That's been one of Stephen A's shticks for years. Back in the day, he was more than happy to go to Miami for the finals, but he wasn't too fond of going to San Antonio back when they, so about a decade ago now, when they were playing in back-to-back finals, he was more than a fan of going to Miami. Didn't want to go to San Antonio and made it known, which I get is kind of funny, but we know he's serious. He wants to go where the nightlife is, especially back then. He was a little younger. He wanted to go where the nightlife was. But I'll tell you a little funny story real quick about Stephen A. So Stephen A. was in our New York office, right? Mm-hmm. The company that owns Deadspin, they also own like 9 other websites. So we have a pretty full office, especially New York is a really full office, multiple websites in there. Stephen A. actually came into the office not too long. Actually, this was about a year ago, maybe. He flat out refused. So from what I was told, I wasn't there, I'm in Chicago, but from what our New York people told us, he flat out refused to talk to Deadspin. He was willing to talk to some other sites, but he did not want to talk to Deadspin. Like flat out refused it. Just did not want to talk to Deadspin.
Wow.
Yeah, he didn't. He was scared of us, so to speak. I'm not gonna say he was scared, but he didn't want to. He didn't want nothing to do with Deadspin. So, yeah.
There was an article written on Deadspin about him recently with the way he's made some comments towards some of his female.
We've done quite a bit on. I've done some on him. I think we've all kind of had our go at Stephen A. I can't remember. I had
one funny one. I remember that. It got a lot of attention when I wrote about his first pitch blunder with the Yankees.
Oh yeah, we all saw that.
When I wrote that, I had people from my past. They were calling me up like on FaceTime. A couple of dudes were howling. Like I thought I was gonna get in trouble because at the time I was with my parents, and right now I'm back home for a few days before I get back to where I'm at. I had my parents looking at me like I was crazy because my friends were howling on my phone when they saw what happened, and they said, "Boy, I know you about to write about this." And I said, "Wait for it." Boom.
Got to.
Article comes up, a big number of views, and these guys are howling in the background, crying, laughing, saying, "You finally got your wish. You finally got to write on him getting embarrassed."
Oh my God. I mean, he kind of embarrasses himself a lot, but that one, it's just so amazing to me now. I understand he played college basketball, but when you watch Stephen A., he looks like one of the most unathletic human beings I've ever seen.
Yes, sir.
He really does. Not that I was some, world-class athlete, because I wasn't,
Neither am I.
I could hold my own in, certain sports, but he just looks like one of the most unathletic people that ever walked the face of the earth. Ever. Now, that doesn't mean that he can't do what he does. I don't think you have to have been great at sports to actually talk about it, write about it, because he was also a really good columnist.
He was a great columnist for the Philadelphia Inquirer.
I think for the Philadelphia Inquirer, before he became the big television star for ESPN. So, but yeah, he's just so that's why that moment was so hilarious to watch him, because he didn't even get close.
No,
he didn't even get close.
I cannot throw a baseball, and in the Hindu culture, where we are, cricket. I'm sure you've heard of that sport. A little bit similar in terms of bowling. My arm is not the same as it once was, so I would not bowl. I probably, if they invited me, I'm like, I probably won't do it, and I'd say no straight up, because my arm is not as strong as it once was. Even when bowling a cricket ball, I can't get the proper arm motion, so I'm not going to go out there and embarrass myself. And he was doing that in studio. And when I told journalists that I work with, I said, "Guys, should we write about this thing?" Even the fan-sided guys that I'm close with, they said, "If he messes this up, it's on you to write this."
Of course.
You're watching everything. You have to write it. And once it went out there, the first thing that came to my mind was, man, Deadspin, if I wrote for Deadspin, they probably would have had a field day with this story.
Oh yeah, and I mean, we did have a field day with it. I think the mistake that a lot of people make when they go out for that first pitch is standing on the mound or even just right in front of it. A lot of people, they throw down. You need to keep it elevated. You got to throw up. Like if you aim to throw down because you're elevated a little bit, it's going to go into the ground almost immediately. And I don't think people realize how far it is away from the
that mound is like
from
it's like
the
a couple
plate.
of feet up. It's not like you're throwing just straight. You actually have to throw down and straight. For cricket, you just have to down and make sure it's within a line per se to hit a wicket. You're not throwing directly at a glove. In baseball, you're gonna go directly toward a glove.
Yeah.
But forget about that for now. Like, go back to the other stuff at hand. Like, trash talking, and then you got other people out there. Like, for example, I love Mike Greenberg, one of the great TV hosts, but his Jets fandom, like the whole Aaron Rodgers thing, the fact that he was on TV, has the Aaron Rodgers jersey, got Rex Ryan, who normally puts his foot in his mouth the wrong way and steps up, goes the wrong way. No pun intended. But
all right, I know what you're talking about too. I know what you're talking about.
Like, no, man. The Jets got so much hype this year. Now we can actually transition to real sports talk.
Oh my God.
All the hype. And I have a friend of mine who's a New England Patriots reporter. His name's Justin Ramos, one of my best friends from college. Unbiased as they come, even though he's a New England guy. I said, dude, the Jets season, what are you expecting? He said, if Aaron Rodgers is healthy, they have a good shot to go to the playoffs. If things go wrong, you can just say, just end the season, which is what the Jets acronym was for. And I laughed like, dude, that's kind of not professional. And he says, it's just a fact. They have not made the championship since 2010 and haven't even made the playoffs since then. The team that we know and I cover, that's what he's telling me, we've been to the Super Bowl multiple years. So we have experience in the postseason. They do not, at least in this decade and not in recent memory. When he goes down 4 snaps in, it almost feels like a eulogy on television because it feels like it's a big funeral. And my thought is, why is that?
It was a very Jets thing to happen, let's be honest. If that's going to happen to one team, probably going to be the Jets. I mean, just think about the offseason. Once he got traded, first we hear that that's where he wants to go. And then it's like, all right, it's not going to happen. It's going to happen, not going to happen. Then he finally gets traded there. All we're hearing about Jets, Aaron Rodgers this, Aaron Rodgers that. And then he comes in and 4 plays in, he's hurt and he's out for the year.
Right.
That's the most Jets thing if I've ever heard one. I mean, it's like they've been cursed for years. They've been cursed for years. Now, I'm not, relishing in the fact that Rodgers got hurt. Right. But it's just a very Jets thing to happen. Mm-hmm. It really is.
There were some people that I spoke to, they said it's similar to the Kurt Warner and Trent Green situation when Trent Green had that injury against the Chargers in the preseason game. But my thought was, hold on. Unlike with the Jets, the Rams still had Marshall Faulk, Torrey Holt, Isaac Bruce, Oz Hakeem, Ricky Prohl, and a pretty darn good offensive line led by Orlando Pace. Now, their defense wasn't as good as their offense, but they're still a formidable group with DeMarco Farr and company. And Kurt Warner had some experience. He was somewhat of I'm not saying he was a great backup, but he had some ability to play.
Well, at the time,
what do we see? Nothing.
At the time, we didn't know what Kurt Warner was. So let's just, Kurt Warner was not Kurt Warner yet. And here's the thing. There hasn't been a Kurt Warner to come forth in this situation. So to me, it's not like that in any means. And also, Trent Green didn't have the history of Aaron Rodgers. So to me, it's nothing like that. I'll be honest. To me, it doesn't really sound anything like that. It's just that Aaron Rodgers came in with all this hype and then he got hurt. And that's the Jets for you, because that's kind of what the Jets are. It's always something that derails the Jets. Always. So going back to what you said about Mike Greenberg, about Greeny, I can understand why he was so happy. Now, whether or not that means he should be doing it on air, but again, that's a shtick. just like Stephen A. with his sticks, whatever he does, Skip Bayless, whoever else you name. We know Greenberg has been a Jets fan forever, right? So I kind of get it, not to give him a pass on it, but I get it. But again, all the fandom and everybody has to have it's like everybody has to have a favorite team. Not really my cup of tea, but I still watch some of these shows. I keep up with it because this is what I do. But yeah, the whole Aaron Rodgers thing and this whole thing about him coming back from this injury, I poo-pooed it from the beginning. I'm like, once he said after his surgery, he said he's working on coming back this year. I'm like, dude, there's no way you're playing this year. No way. This injury usually takes at least 6 to 8 months before you can really start getting out there and working out again. You're going to do it in 3 months. He got hurt in September. He wants to come back by late December, early January. That's 3-4 months. And on top of that, he's almost 40 years old.
Yep.
It's not like
I've seen people come back from Achilles injuries, but that was the following year.
Yeah, not that fast.
And then they look good. Like, okay, it's not a death sentence like it is for some other players at certain positions.
Not anymore.
But still it's a blow.
Oh my God. I mean, to expect to come back from that type of injury in 3-4 months, that's just, it's wishful thinking, in my opinion. And that's what I called it. I wrote about it immediately. And I'm like, yeah, this is wishful thinking. Like I don't think he's coming back. Now, if I'm wrong and he comes back and plays in week 17, 16, 17, 18, fine. He does. I'll apologize. I was wrong. I don't think I'm going to be wrong, though. I just don't. I don't think I'm going to be wrong about that.
I don't think your apologies will be put out on social media anytime. Matter of fact, you'll probably be laughing if he tries to come back and he ends up stinking up the joint.
Now, I don't want anyone to mistake this for me wishing harm upon Aaron Rodgers.
No.
Personally, I hope he does not come back this year, because if he comes back and gets hurt again, he's done. If he comes back too soon and gets hurt again, he's done. So, dude, just wait till next year. The Jets aren't going anywhere this year. Let's be honest. They're not going anywhere.
Absolutely. Speaking of the NFL, I'm going to go through each division and tell me what your thoughts are. We'll start with the AFC East. We've got Miami, Buffalo, New York, and then New England. Who do you think is going to end up winning that division, if you had to guess right now?
You said the East?
Yes, sir. AFC East.
I mean, at this point, the way the Patriots are out, of course. Yeah. The Jets don't have a shot anymore. I'll even say the Bills don't have a shot. The Bills might not even make the playoffs, let's be honest. So, I mean, by default, the Dolphins are good, but by default, it's the Dolphins. It's got to be the Dolphins. I mean, they got a 2.5 game lead right now.
I think so,
on the division. It's just with what, 6 games left, 5 games left, it's not enough time for Buffalo to catch up, because I don't see Miami losing out. They're going to win at least a couple more games, maybe 3 or 4 more games. So, that's the Dolphins' division, and it should be.
Right. It's hard to believe. For much of our life, New England, you said New England was out. Normally, it was they're in.
Of course, yeah.
Now,
I mean,
hey.
20 years they ruled the division. Didn't have much competition in that time either.
Not their fault. It is what it is.
No, I'm not blaming them. I'm just saying that division for the longest was not very good. It just wasn't.
Yep. The AFC North, Cincinnati has owned it the last few years. Now, honestly, I think they're not even going to the playoffs. I think it's Baltimore and Pittsburgh once again.
Yeah, Baltimore's going to win the division. Pittsburgh is good, but Pittsburgh is weird to me because they've been outscored this season. They have a negative point differential, which isn't everything, but they have a negative point differential, and they're 7-4. To me, that is amazing. Like, that's amazing. So I think that comes down to coaching, and we may have seen addition by subtraction with Matt Canada finally getting canned, because while they only scored 16 points this past week, they put up 421 yards. They hadn't done that in almost 3.5 years. I think the last time they did that, Ben Roethlisberger was playing. So it's been a while.
The AFC South, that's a little bit of a shocker with Jacksonville and Houston. Now, give Houston credit. It looks like they picked the right rookie quarterback, but if their OC were to leave, is CJ Stroud going to still be the same?
I mean, you would hope so. Honestly, I did not expect Stroud to be this good, especially not this fast. I can admit I was wrong on that. I mean, he's
I
looked.
mean, that's not a bad take though, per se.
I mean, yeah, but I mean, that was just my opinion. I just didn't because if you look at really a lot of the Ohio State quarterbacks that have come in, they haven't done well in the NFL. Now
Yep.
that doesn't mean someone can't. I just, I wasn't sure if he was gonna, especially not this fast. I mean, a lot of the games this season, you watch him, he looks poised back there. He looks like a veteran. Now, he has had games, a couple recently, where he's made some, mistakes, rookie mistakes, especially in this last game against Jacksonville. But for the most part, he looks like he's been in the league for at least a couple years, not a rookie. But I picked Jacksonville to win this division all along. I still think they're going to pull it out and win the division. I just think it's Jacksonville's time. I'm so big on. I mean, if you go back to the Chargers game in the playoffs,
Yes, sir.
the fact that they were able to hang. Now, I get it. The Chargers do things like that, but the fact that they were able to hang. I mean, most teams get down 27-0. They're hauling it in.
Yeah, but it's apparently Jacksonville and New England don't get that memo.
They don't
Or
get.
even
They had.
Dallas
They
against
get.
Atlanta. They didn't get that memo.
Yeah. So, I like Jacksonville, and I've actually, picked Jacksonville as my sleeper team to make it to the AFC Championship this year.
That's possible. Heck, if they end up making the Super Bowl, I wouldn't be too shocked either. But I think they're maybe one or year away from like really establishing themselves.
They probably are, as far as Super Bowl goes, but I'm giving them a good shot to make it to the AFC Championship. Now, they run into Kansas City, all bets are off because Kansas City is just a team that figures out how to win. I know we're going to get to them in a minute with that division, but they're just a team. They got the experience. They just know how to win close games.
Yep. And the AFC West, as you previously mentioned just now. Kansas City, of course, probably going to win that thing. The Broncos.
No, probably.
How do you come back from giving up a 70 burger, a 50 piece with 20 extra nuggets, and then you look pretty good so far? The Chargers, I don't know what's going on with them. The Raiders, man. Woo.
Chargers, Raiders, they're done. Brandon Staley, I wrote about him again the other day. He's done. It's over. It's time to move on. You don't want to get into a position where you're wasting too many years of Justin Herbert. I really like Justin Herbert. When I was doing radio out in Portland, I got to cover him some when he was at Oregon. So I've always liked Justin Herbert. I think he's going to be, he already is one of the next great young quarterbacks. In a couple years, we're going to be talking about him as one of the like one or two best in the league, in my opinion. But you got to get Brandon Staley out of there. You got to get Brandon Staley out of there because you're going to waste too much of this kid. Luckily, he hasn't hit his prime just yet, but it's coming. You don't want Brandon Staley there mucking this up. 4 years in the league, it looks like he's only going to make the playoffs one time in his first 4 years.
And then that one loss.
Then you got that loss on there, which he gets fault for that too. I'm not going to put that all on coaching. That entire team takes fault for, you have a 27-point lead. you got to close that out. I'm sorry. You got to close it out.
Now we move to the NFC. The East is quite, shall we say, it's a two-man race between Philadelphia and Dallas. Now, I believe Philly will win the division.
They will.
But I would not be surprised if the Cowboys somehow make some noise in the playoffs, despite what Mr. Smith and a lot of those detractors would say. I would not be surprised.
No, I would be surprised. Now, when you say make noise, do you mean make it past the divisional round? That's my definition.
No. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is they play well enough before the inevitable happens that they lose. But, I mean, we've seen them at times. People thought they'd lose a wild card game when they're on the road or even a home game. They come out and shut people up. And then, of course, the losing division around the chatter opens up. But what I'm saying is that defense, there is something about that defense that makes me believe, you know what? Maybe, not saying 100%, but maybe they're a little bit better than we're giving them credit for. even though
Oh,
their beatable is also rants.
they might be a little bit
better than people give them credit for.
They might be a little bit better, but ultimately, 2 years ago they lost in the wild card round to San Francisco. Sure. Last year they lost in the divisional round to San Francisco. Here's the key for Dallas. Avoid the 49ers. All right. That is the key for the Cowboys. Avoid the Niners. Eventually, they would have to run into either them or the Eagles. Ultimately, I don't think they're better than either team.
Me neither. But they're still a good team. I'm not gonna. I can't deny that they're a good team.
I just don't. And I'm not saying Dallas is not good. Personally, I know Dak has played great this year, but to me, he's just not the guy to get them over the hump. I think he's good, but he's not good enough or able to elevate to great when they need him to be great, meaning against the more upper echelon teams in the league.
Right. Let's go on to the NFC North now. And frankly, if many years ago, if I was saying what I'm about to say, I'd be laughed at. The Lions are leading the division.
Yeah, I was. Hey, the Lions.
Who would have thunk it?
The Lions are making moves. They should win this division. 8-3 right now. Minnesota's the closest team. I don't see Minnesota catching them.
When Minnesota loses to Chicago, no chance. And
yeah, Chicago, I mean,
man, like
that division's a little bit down right now. But the Lions look good, and the Lions are another team that now the same way you said the Cowboys could make noise, the Lions could make noise.
But the Lions, I think, have a better chance per se because no one really expects too much out of them.
And if the Lions and Cowboys somehow were to end up playing in the first round, although I don't think they will, the Cowboys will probably be the 5 seed, and they'll play the South winner, I believe, in that division. Yeah. They'll probably beat them like they did last year, right? So that's probably what's going to happen. But I give the Lions a chance to at least win because they're going to win the division. They'll get a home playoff game. They win at least one game in my division. In my opinion, one playoff game in my opinion. With the possibility of a second, but I see it more like they're going to win one, and then they're either going to run into the Eagles or possibly the Niners. Actually, they could be the 2 seed, so you just never know there. But I don't know if I can pick the Lions over the Niners or Eagles right now.
True. We're going to get to the South in just a moment, but I want to get to the West because you brought up the Niners. They're in the thick of it. The Seahawks are still in the mix to potentially make the playoffs. I'm not gonna say Geno Smith is the guy, but I will give Pete Carroll that credit for this. After all the stuff that they went through, they've got a pretty young secondary that deserves their props. Devin Witherspoon looks more and more like the guy that they spent a high draft pick on. He looks pretty good to me.
Yeah,
Woolen, that's a steal. Kobe Bryant, not the basketball superstar. God
rest his
soul. God rest his soul, of course. Mama, we love you. Brian Cook. No, he's with the Chiefs, my bad. Kobe Bryant, who's now in Seattle. They've got a pretty good secondary. And Bobby Wagner, the last remaining guy from that Super Bowl, he's a leader. I would not be surprised to see Seattle in the playoffs. I'm not saying they're going to win a game, but if you told me they're going to make a wild card run, I wouldn't be surprised one bit.
That wouldn't surprise me either. I don't think they'll win a game unless they can get up to the 5 seed and play the winner of the South. Other than that, sure. I don't see them beating Detroit or San Francisco as far as 2 and 3 go. I just don't see it happening. But I think they can make the playoffs. You mentioned Geno Smith not being the guy. He's the guy right now. He's not the long-term answer. Right. He might not even be there 2 years from now, let alone 3 to 5 years from now. But he is the guy for right now. He's their best option right now. And Geno's played well. Now, it was more of a surprise last year because all we remembered was the Geno from the Jets, right? So that's what we all remembered. But he came out and he proved a lot of people wrong. He's good. He's a stopgap is what he is. Until they find their young franchise guy, their next Russell Wilson, so to speak, until they find that guy. Now, that may not even be under Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll, I think, is 70, 71 already. So
he's in there.
He's in good shape for his age, but who knows how much longer he really wants to coach, right? So we'll see what happens there. But Geno's the guy for now. Good enough to make the playoffs, but I don't think they go further than the wild card round. And it would be an upset if they beat one of those other teams I mentioned.
That is true. And last but not least, the South. Really not going to get too much into that division. I mean, granted, someone is coming out of that division,
Yes, someone has to win it.
but am I wrong for saying that the Falcons will win the division? And if they were to do something in the draft, they could actually be a legitimate team that people take seriously? Am I wrong for saying that?
No, you're not wrong. I mean, right now they're tied for first in the division, 5-6 with the Saints. I mean, which is, that is what it is. It's a down division right now. It's not very good, but again, like you said, somebody has to win it. It depends on what they would do in the draft as far as, becoming a team, but they have pieces there. They have some of the pieces in place already, right? So
right, Robinson and Pitts.
Yes, make a couple moves in the draft as well as free agency in the offseason. Next year, they could be right back in the same position, but with a better record.
That's true. So, if you had to pick a Super Bowl matchup right now, not saying that you think it's going to happen, what matchup would you want to see? How about
that? What I want to see? I mean, there's so many matchups, but oh man, maybe a rematch between the Niners and Chiefs from a few years ago. You know what I mean? Not all the same pieces in place, obviously. Well, sure. At least for KC, most of them, but the main ones, outside of Tyreek, obviously. But yeah, maybe a rematch there, or I mean, even a rematch. And now I'm going with realistic options here. I'm not going to just, I'm not just picking anybody just because that's what I want to see. I mean, I think there's a realistic chance that we could get Eagles Chiefs again. The only reason I'll balk at that is because it is extremely hard to make it back to the Super Bowl.
Right.
It is extremely hard because in a one game, single elimination format, we've seen it before. Upsets happen. Anything. I mean, look at the Niners last year with all the. Now, I'm not saying Philly doesn't win the game anyway, but look at all the injuries that happened in one game for the Niners in the NFC Championship. Absolutely. I mean, all these things factor in. Again, not saying Philly doesn't win anyway, but I think the game is closer for the whole game as opposed to the second half. They just kind of run away with it. You know what I mean? So all these things factor in. So yeah, but I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Chiefs and Eagles. And I think, to me, the AFC is stacked, but I still think the AFC is KC's to lose. I really do. Even if they don't get the home field advantage, because if Baltimore finishes, right now, Baltimore is a half game ahead for the number 1 seed in the AFC. So if Baltimore gets it, I still think it's KC's conference to lose because they've won it however many years in a row now.
They've been in the conference championship for a long time. And before we get to your NFC predictions, when we think of the Chiefs, I hate to ask this, but there is a pop star that is kind of getting attention.
Lots of attention.
And there have been some questions about whether or not if the Chiefs does Taylor Swift have anything to do with Travis Kelce's performance? And if they win the Super Bowl, it's a ratings bonanza and all that stuff. Like, have you heard of this information and what are your thoughts on it?
I've heard of it. I've written on it a little bit. I just think it's funny. The NFL is soaking it all up because if you notice any game she's at, especially the first couple games, the camera was on her constantly.
Yeah.
In the booth. So in a luxury suite, wherever it is. So yeah, of course they're going to milk that. And they're getting, now the NFL does great ratings regardless.
Sure.
But then you get a pop star who's one of the biggest in the world, not the country, but the world, to endorse one of your best players, probably the best tight end in the league right now, to endorse him, whether they're actually dating or not. She's endorsing Travis Kelce. She's endorsing the Chiefs, even though her family is the Eagles family. They played a couple weeks ago.
Yep.
The NFL is doing the right thing. They're soaking it up. Now, it does nothing for me because, that's not my demographic. I'm not 16 or 17-year-old girl. So personally, I could not care less. But it is fun to kind of just watch and see how crazy people are going over this. And the NFL, it's adding to their ratings, which is what it's all about for them. They already do great ratings, but if you get a couple extra million watching you because they just want to see Taylor Swift in the booth or see her walk in with Travis Kelce and walk out with him, hey, it is what it is. They're doing what they need to do.
Right. There's the matchup I'd like to see, if possible, Baltimore and Philadelphia.
That'd be a good one.
I think that the intensity between those two, particularly their style of play, Philly's a very strong line of scrimmage type of team. Baltimore's a little bit similar in that regard. The physicality of that kind of matchup would really intrigue me. But like you said, 49ers, Chiefs, Eagles is possible, but I'm looking from a different perspective. What if it's Ravens and 49ers?
Oh,
I mean, I mean, I'm just saying
you
it's
could get
possible.
that. Yeah.
Because they're both really good quality teams, and for them to meet in Sin City. But also, have you noticed over the last few years, before we wrap things up, have you noticed the Super Bowl logos? 56 was orange and yellow, and the Rams and the Bengals were in there. 57 was green and red. You had Philadelphia and Kansas City. This year it's purple and red, so Baltimore, San Francisco.
Well, hey, if it happens, your theory probably holds up, right? Because that'll be three times in a row.
I'm just seeing it, and it just seems kind of odd, but don't you think it's a little bit funny?
It is funny. It is funny. Now I hadn't really noticed that, but now I'm going to be watching and paying attention. I'm going to think about that. And, if we get to late January, early February, and it's like, oh, we got the Ravens and Niners in 2 weeks in the Super Bowl. I'm like, all right, my man was onto something like that. And I mean, that would go to the whole thing about, the script that goes out at the beginning of the season to everybody. That would go to that. Yeah. I just think that's hilarious, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. That would be a good matchup, though. Ravens, 49ers.
That'd be a really good matchup.
That'd be a good matchup. I'm not sure if that's the one that the league would want, but yeah, who cares? I'm just saying, because I mean, they'll never admit it, but these leagues, they always have a favorite. Oh, yeah. Whoever's going to bring the biggest ratings is the favorite. So if the Chiefs are in, as far as the AFC goes, it's probably the Chiefs at this point, as far as the biggest rating that they could get from an AFC team. And I think it would definitely be bigger than the Ravens. But I like Lamar Jackson. I like that coaching staff. I like that team. So I wouldn't be mad at the Ravens making it. And I think they have a chance.
Absolutely. Well, folks, that's going to do it for today's episode with me and Criss Partee of Deadspin. I want to thank you for joining us. Please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. Follow us on our social media, and you can catch Criss on Deadspin. Take a look at his articles. A lot of good stuff out there. And, of course, Deadspin's got some great stories that you might be interested in, and, of course, fan-sided as well. But, again, thank you guys for listening. This is the SG3 podcast. We call it like we see it. We'll catch you guys next time.